Jalen Dawson stepped out of the Los Angeles County Courthouse, the sun hitting him like a warm embrace after the icy chill of the courtroom. He paused on the steps, taking a moment to soak in the reality of what had just happened. Breathless reporters swarmed around him, their cameras flashing like bright stars, eager to capture the moment. Questions flew at him from every direction. "Jalen, did you know the judge would dismiss the case? How does it feel to outsmart the prosecutor? What will you do next?" But Jalen couldn't focus on their words. He pushed past them, his heart racing, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over him. He had stood up in that sterile room, faced the pomp of legal authority, and emerged victorious. The weight of the charges against him had felt like a boulder, yet here he was, free. The crowd's noise faded as he spotted a familiar figure at the base of the steps. His mother, Denise, standing with her arms crossed, her face both stern and proud. "Jalen," she called out. He rushed down the steps and wrapped his arms around her, feeling the softness of her embrace that felt like home. After everything that had happened, it felt good to be held by someone who loved him unconditionally. "You scared me half to death," Denise said, pulling back just enough to look into his eyes, searching for answers. Her worry was clear, mixed with relief. "I was so afraid you'd be taken away for something you didn't do. Your choices, they can have serious consequences." "I know, Mom," he replied, brushing a hand through his curls. "But I had to take the risk. I couldn't just let them label me as a criminal without fighting back." Pride swelled in Denise's chest but was quickly followed by concern. She had spent years working as a paralegal, understanding the intricacies of the legal system well enough to know how easily things could go wrong. "You are so smart, Jalen. You've always been smart. But the system isn't fair, and it isn't kind. You have to be careful. I don't want you to find yourself in that position again." Jalen nodded, taking a deep breath. She was right. What he had done was dangerous, but something inside him had ignited a passion he never knew existed. He didn't fear the system. He wanted to challenge it, dissect it, uncover the truths hidden beneath layers of injustice. "I won today, Mom. But this isn't just about me. I want to help others who feel trapped, who don't know how to fight back." As they started to walk away from the courthouse, the chatter of the reporters faded into the background, replaced by the quiet of their shared thoughts. Jalen gazed up at the sky, pondering how he could turn this experience into something meaningful. He could already see other faces in his mind, people who had been wronged, just like him. "What if I could do more?" he mused aloud, half to himself. "What do you mean?" Denise asked, intrigued. "What if I started something? A group. We could help people understand their rights and find ways to defend themselves. I've seen too many stories of people getting thrown into jail for things they didn't do," he explained, excitement building in his voice. "I want to empower them, give them the tools to stand up for themselves." Denise stopped walking and turned to him, her brow raised. "That's a big dream to take on, Jalen. You're just 19. Do you really think you can take on something like that?" "I have to try, Mom. If I can fight for myself, imagine how many others I can help. I'll gather people together, educate them about their rights, and create support networks." The determination in his eyes was unmistakable. Denise studied her son, weighing the seriousness of his words. "I admire your passion, Jalen. But remember, it won't be easy. You'll face obstacles, pushback, and maybe even danger. The justice system can be unjust." Jalen finished for her, the word heavy in his mouth. "I know. But that's why I want to do this. This isn't just about me winning my case. This is about changing something bigger, something that can help a whole community." They continued walking, and the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the streets of Los Angeles. Jalen felt invigorated, inspired by the possibilities that lay ahead. In his heart, he carried a deep sense of purpose. That night, he sat at his desk, surrounded by books and notebooks filled with legal jargon and highlighted passages. Each word leaped off the pages, fueling his drive. He replayed the trial in his mind, the laughter of the courtroom at the judge's jokes, the confidence of the prosecutor, the gasps of the jurors when he unveiled the truth. It was a game, but Jalen had learned the rules, and he intended to teach others how to play. With a pen in hand, Jalen began to jot down his ideas. He created an outline for a community workshop, Know Your Rights, a guide for everyone, focusing on how to defend oneself in a legal system that often overlooked the truth in favor of easy convictions. He scribbled down ideas for flyers, considering locations where they might host meetings, and brainstormed potential partnerships with local advocacy groups. Hours passed, and the world beyond his window darkened. The streetlights flickered on, and Jalen's eyes drooped with fatigue, but he refused to stop. His mom had gone to bed, but he remained wide awake, driven by a fire that refused to die. Just as he thought he might fall asleep, he remembered Marcus Jennings, the young man who had been wrongfully sentenced to 5 years in prison. Jalen's heart sank at the thought of his story. An innocent life changed forever by a single mistake. He quickly typed Marcus's name into a search engine, hoping to find more about his case. The words scrolled past his eyes, each detail more infuriating than the last. Finally, he found contact information for Marcus's family. Without hesitation, he drafted an email, introducing himself and explaining his interest in Marcus's case, along with his vision to help others avoid the same fate. He felt a rush of excitement as he pressed send, a small thread connecting him to the greater web of injustices he longed to combat. That night marked the beginning of something new for Jalen Dawson, not just a journey of self-discovery, but a call to action. Each small step he took felt monumental. He could be a voice for the voiceless, weaving together stories of those who had suffered in silence. And though the road ahead looked daunting, he felt compelled to push forward, driven by a newfound purpose that burned deep within his core. As the sun rose the next morning, illuminating the world outside, Jalen knew he was ready to take the first steps towards building a legacy of his own, one where justice and truth reigned, not just for himself but for everyone who had ever been wronged. And with that thought resting firmly in his heart, he began taking notes for his next meeting, excited about the possibility of change ***, Chapter 1. The heat of the courtroom ***. Judge Walter Grayson leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming idly on the mahogany bench. The atmosphere in the Los Angeles County Courthouse buzzed with nervous energy, charged with whispers from the full gallery. Jalen Dawson stood before the judge, a 19-year-old with a defiant chin and hands shoved deep in his pockets. Accused of grand theft auto and resisting arrest, he was anything but the typical defendant. "Do you think you're some kind of legal expert?" Judge Grayson's voice dripped with skepticism. Laughter rippled through the room, but Jalen didn't flinch. He had never intended to be here, yet he had spent years mentally preparing for this moment, honing his understanding of the law through conversations with his mother, a seasoned paralegal. He had witnessed how justice could be derailed by bias and assumptions. As the prosecutor, Mitchell Carrington, stood to present the case, Jalen felt a calm confidence wash over him. "Your Honor, the state will prove that Jalen Dawson was caught red-handed in a stolen vehicle." Carrington's rehearsed tone filled the room. The statement fell flat, igniting a flicker of doubt in Jalen's mind. Jalen watched, calculating every word that flowed from Carrington's mouth. The prosecutor painted a picture of guilt, a stolen Audi, pursued by police, fingerprints found on the steering wheel. But Jalen had anticipated this narrative, and it didn't reflect the truth. "Let's break this down," Jalen interjected, his voice steady. "So, the prosecution's entire argument hinges on the notion that my fingerprints mean I stole the car, correct?" He turned his focus to the jury, who were now leaning forward, intrigued. Carrington tried to regain control. "Yes, but the evidence is clear. Evidence can be twisted, counselor. I was near that car hours before it was reported stolen, only touching the door. Does touching something make you a criminal?" Whispers floated through the gallery as Jalen's perspective began to shift the narrative. Carrington's confident facade cracked slightly, and Jalen pressed on. "Let's talk about Officer Ruiz's testimony. He claims to have seen me in the vehicle, but his report says he wasn't even on duty when the chase began." A murmur rippled through the room, tension tightening like a noose. Carrington's brow furrowed as he attempted to regain his composure, but Jalen moved closer, escalating his momentum. "I want to verify Officer Ruiz's GPS logs from that night," Jalen demanded, locking eyes with the judge. Carrington opened his mouth to protest, but hesitated. The courtroom held its breath as Grayson contemplated the request. "Does the prosecution have any objections?" Grayson finally asked. "No, Your Honor," Carrington muttered, his neck reddening. With a subtle nod, Grayson signaled for Jalen to continue. "I also want to draw attention to the forensic analysis. Was the analyzing specialist even called to testify?" The room tensed anew, feeling the intensity of Jalen's inquiry. "I'd like to remind the court that the burden of proof is on the prosecution," Jalen stated, his voice steady. "And if they can't produce the forensic specialist, how credible is their evidence?" Carrington clenched his jaw, shifting uncomfortably. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant," he snapped, trying to redirect the narrative. "Is it, though?" Jalen pressed, his heart pounding. "Because if the prosecution relies on evidence without proper authentication, we're treading on dangerous ground. The state charges I committed a crime, yet I wasn't even in possession of the car at the time of the alleged theft." Every juror's gaze rested on him, rapt attention hanging on his every word. Jalen knew he was pushing boundaries but felt emboldened by the truth he was revealing. As silence blanketed the courtroom, Jalen made his final move. "I would like to submit the statement of the vehicle's registered owner, Mr. Raymond Whitaker, who confirmed he left his car running while he went inside the gas station, stating that it must have been taken by another kid." The air thickened with anticipation. He read aloud from the statement, describing how Mr. Whitaker had seen the actual thief, a white teenager, place the blame on Jalen. "I do not fit that description," Jalen insisted. Carrington shifted angrily, trying to assert control, but the realization had already begun to dawn on the jury. For the first time, doubts began to creep into their minds about the narrative they had been fed. "Your Honor, this isn't just a dismissal of an individual case. It's a critique of systemic flaws," Jalen continued, his voice rising in intensity. "I was arrested not because of what I did but because of who I am." Grayson rubbed his temples, weighing the unfolding consequences. "Does the prosecution have anything further?" he asked, turning to Carrington, whose confidence had all but evaporated. "No, Your Honor," Carrington finally admitted, resignation licking at his voice. Then the court. Case dismissed. Grayson's gavel fell. The words echoed through the room like the final note of a symphony, leaving stunned silence in their wake. As chaos erupted around him, a tide of disbelief and relief flooded the gallery. Jalen inhaled deeply, allowing accomplishment to sink in. He had done more than simply defend himself. He had challenged a flawed system. The budding reporter in the corner rushed to grab a microphone, but Jalen paid them no mind. His attention was drawn to the exit, where his mother stood waiting, her arms crossed and brows knit in worry. When their eyes met, she seemed torn between anger and pride. "Boy, you scared me half to death," she breathed, shaking her head as he approached. "Had to take a risk, Ma," Jalen chuckled, scratching his head. Her stern demeanor softened into a proud smile as she pulled him into a tight hug. "You always were the stubborn one." Outside, a flurry of reporters converged, cameras flashing like angry fireflies in the fading sunlight. Jalen's mind, however, was elsewhere. He absorbed the chaos but understood that his battle was not merely over, it had only just begun. As he stepped into the light, he felt the weight of possibility gather in his chest. Next time, he wouldn't stand as a defendant but as an advocate, not only for himself but for all those unheard voices lost within the system. The fight for justice had taken a pivotal turn, and it was only the beginning. The morning light flooded Jalen's room, illuminating the neatly stacked pages of notes and ideas he had scribbled down the night before. A sense of determination washed over him as he reviewed his thoughts from the previous evening. The email to Marcus's family had set something in motion, a spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could make a difference. Jalen quickly grabbed his phone. His fingers wavered for just a second before he pressed the screen to check for replies. Nothing yet. His heart sank momentarily. He tried to reassure himself that patience was key, that change often took time. Instead of dwelling on that worry, he decided to take action. If he wanted to help others, he needed to start small while his idea grew. After breakfast, Jalen called his best friend, Maya. They had been inseparable since childhood, and she knew him better than anyone. Their conversations always danced between the serious and the silly, but this time, he needed her unwavering support. When she answered, He could hear the sleep still lingering in her voice. "Hey, sleepyhead. You free to talk?" he asked, a playful smile forming. "Of course. Especially after hearing your big news. Did you call to tell me that you've got a reality TV show now, or what?" Maya joked lazily. "No, nothing like that," Jalen chuckled. He grew serious. "I need your help, though. I've got this idea, and I think we could make it happen together." "What kind of idea?" she asked, now fully awake. Jalen took a deep breath, excitement buzzing in his chest. "I want to start a community project dedicated to helping people know their rights. I want to create workshops that teach folks about the legal system, what to do when they're in trouble, how to defend themselves, and how to find the available resources." Maya's silence on the other end told him a lot. He could almost hear her brain working hard to process his proposal. "Wow, that's actually fantastic. You have a plan or something?" "Kind of. I sketched out how we could do it, starting with a monthly meetup at the community center, sharing information, and bringing in guest speakers, lawyers, activists, anyone who can help. I also thought we could create flyers and maybe even a social media presence to spread the word." "That sounds amazing, Jalen. But where will we find the right speakers?" "I'm working on it," he said, determined. "I reached out to Marcus's family. I want to connect with him. He was wrongfully convicted a few years ago, and I think his story would inspire people. If they respond, it could be a pivotal moment for us." Okay, Maya replied, full of energy now. "I'm in. Let's meet at the coffee shop around noon. We can plan this out together. I want to add some of my ideas too." As they talked, Jalen felt a surge of hope. The more they planned, the more real their idea became. Jalen also thought of his class at the community college, where he could invite people who had their share of experiences. Each person had a story, a lesson, and all could learn from one another. After their call, Jalen grabbed a backpack and filled it with notepads, pens, and a few snacks. He was about to step out of his house when his phone buzzed. It was his mom texting him, "Can you come home for lunch? I want to talk to you about something important." Curious about what could be so urgent, Jalen hurried home, his mind swirling with ideas for the workshops. When he arrived home, the table was set, and the fragrance of her homemade chicken soup filled the air. "I figured a little comfort food would help," Denise said with a warm smile, her eyes twinkling. It made Jalen's heart swell. "But I also wanted to ask how your plans are coming along." "I'm getting things moving, Ma. I talked to Maya, and she's on board. I emailed Marcus's family, and I really hope they respond." "This could change everything," Jalen replied eagerly as he ladled soup into a bowl. Denise listened carefully as Jalen detailed his plans, her expression shifting from pride to caution. "Jalen, this is incredible. I believe in your heart and passion," she said, "but remember that not everyone will support you. Change can bring resistance. Be prepared for that." "I will, Mom. I promise. I just feel like if I don't take this chance, I'll regret it forever. People need someone to help them, to give them a voice. The justice system can be so cold and confusing." "I know, sweetie. I just want you to protect yourself too. Surround yourself with good people. Like Maya. She's always had your back," Denise reminded him. "And don't hesitate to lean on me if you need support." "Thanks, Ma. That means everything to me," Jalen replied sincerely, finishing his soup and feeling a warmth spread through him beyond the comfort of the meal. This felt like something greater than just a project. It felt like a mission. Once they finished lunch, Jalen headed back to the coffee shop to meet Maya. As he walked, he thought about how best to structure the first meeting. They would have to make it appealing, maybe provide refreshments and a welcoming atmosphere. He envisioned a space filled with chatter, laughter, and most importantly, people sharing experiences in a supportive environment. Maya was already at the coffee shop, pen in hand, surrounded by a small mountain of papers. Her bright smile met him at the door. "You're just in time. I've got some local resources we can use, and I've even found a few people who might be willing to come speak at our first meeting," she said excitedly. "Really? That's awesome. Who do you have?" "Well, there's a legal aid group that focuses on helping people understand their rights. I spoke to one of the coordinators, and she's interested in doing a workshop, Maya explained. Plus, I thought we could include a session on how to stay safe during police encounters, which could be really important. Jalen nodded, his heart racing at the possibilities. That's perfect! And if we can get Marcus involved, that would really draw people in too. His story is incredibly powerful. The two spent hours brainstorming and drafting plans, their ideas bouncing back and forth like a game of ping pong. They broke down the tasks into smaller pieces, assigning roles and responsibilities to keep each other accountable. Jalen felt a surge of adrenaline as they sketched out the first flyer, brainstorming catchy headers like, "Your rights matter. Know them, claim them." Together, they envisioned the backdrop for this community initiative, a safe space where voices could unite and experiences could heal. But as the day went on, another thought nagged at Jalen. How would the community respond? Would they embrace this effort, or would it fall flat? They wrapped up their planning session as dusk began to settle, darkness creeping in and lights flickering to life outside the cafe windows. Jalen looked at Maya, who was deep in thought, nibbling on the edge of her pen. You know, we need a name for what we're doing. Something that captures our mission. Right. What about Voices United? Or Rights in Focus? Maya suggested. Those are good, but we need something that really resonates with people, Jalen said, contemplating. How about Community First? Empowering lives. It has a nice ring to it and reflects what we want. Community involvement, empowerment, and unity. Community First it is. Maya clapped her hands in agreement. Now, let's get to work on that flyer. We need to get this out there as soon as possible. Fueled by an insatiable excitement and a sense of purpose, Jalen and Maya dived deep into their project, unaware that the tide was beginning to shift around them. The seeds they were sowing in their community would soon blossom, but there would also be challenges ahead, and not everyone would welcome their mission with open arms. As they left the coffee shop that night, Jalen couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something bigger than he had ever imagined. Little did he know, the journey ahead would test not only his resolve but also his understanding of justice, friendship, and the very fabric of community. The storm was coming, but so was the chance for real change. The following week felt like a whirlwind for Jalen and Maya. The announcement of their newly formed initiative, Community First, had picked up momentum. They worked tirelessly to finalize the details for their first workshop, now just a few days away. The excitement in the air was palpable as they managed to secure a local community center for their meeting space and to promote it on social media. Jalen couldn't believe the response they were getting when he peeked at the event page. It had been shared widely, and people from various backgrounds had expressed interest in attending. Some from his community college, others from nearby neighborhoods, and even those connected through local advocacy groups. Look at this, Jalen. We have over 50 people interested, and that's before even reaching out to Marcus's family. Maya exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Honestly, I'm just trying to keep my nerves in check, Jalen said, biting his lip as he scrolled through the comments and web of connections forming. What if no one shows up? What if they don't take us seriously? Focus on the positive, Jalen. You're doing this for them, for a cause bigger than us. We're the vessels, but the community is the heart of it. Just remember that, Maya replied, her tone steady, grounding him. With each passing day, their plans developed and grew. They lined up additional speakers, including representatives from local law firms and members of community organizations that specialized in civil rights. Excitement mingled with apprehension as they approached the day of the workshop. Finally, the day arrived. Jalen arrived at the community center early, desperately trying to channel his nerves into anticipation. He set up the chairs, each one a potential seat for someone ready to learn and share their experiences. The walls were adorned with colorful posters advocating for rights and empowerment, framed by a large banner that read Community First. Empowering lives. Maya arrived shortly after, a stack of flyers in hand. I've got the last batch of handouts. Let's place them on each seat, she said, a bright smile on her face. As people began to arrive, Jalen felt a mix of pride and anxiety. Each new face that walked through the door brought a splash of adrenaline. The room began to fill, the atmosphere buzzing with a sense of curiosity and camaraderie. Jalen felt himself relax, slowly succumbing to the energy of the gathering. Thank you all for being here today. We're so excited to host this workshop and to kick off Community First. My name is Jalen, and this is my partner in crime, Maya, he said as he stood at the front, gesturing toward Maya. Today, we'll be focusing on the importance of knowing your rights, sharing stories, and creating a community network to help each other. This isn't just a workshop, it's the beginning of a movement. As he spoke, he saw familiar faces in the crowd. Friends from college, neighbors, and even some individuals he didn't recognize but clearly had stories to tell. He felt a spark ignite within him, and he began introducing the first speaker, a seasoned civil rights attorney named Ms. Ramirez, who spoke passionately about citizens' rights and the importance of advocacy. With every speaker, the participants listened intently, absorbing knowledge and asking questions. There were discussions about personal stories of encounters with law enforcement, systemic barriers faced by marginalized communities, and toolkits for people to navigate complex legal situations. The energy in the room was electric. Jalen looked around and saw people engaging, sharing, and building connections. It was more than he had hoped for, and in that moment, he realized this was what he had wanted all along. A community united in learning, sharing, and lifting each other up. As the workshop came to a close, Jalen felt a sense of satisfaction swell in his chest. But as the final speaker wrapped up their talk, a woman raised her hand from the back of the room. Jalen encouraged her to share. I just wanted to say thank you, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I've been through some really tough times with the police. They didn't listen to me, and I felt completely powerless. But this workshop has shown me that I'm not alone and that we have strength in numbers. I want to help too. A ripple of applause broke out among the attendees. One by one, others shared their experiences and expressed their gratitude for Community First. They didn't just leave with knowledge, they left with hope, a sense of belonging and purpose. As attendees mingled during the networking session, Jalen felt a strange pull in his gut. He made his way over to the woman who had spoken earlier. I'm glad you found this helpful. What's your name? Lila. And honestly, I want to get more involved. I've been wanting to do something, but I never knew where to begin, she said, her eyes shining with determination. Let's make it happen. We can set up a community board where everyone can share ideas and organize efforts, Jalen proposed. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, camaraderie building. Jalen couldn't help but think this was precisely why they had started Community First. To foster voices like Lila's, to spur action, and encourage people to stand together. As the workshop ended, Jalen and Maya shared relieved glances, recognizing the success of their endeavor. The energy in the room was buoyant, a force propelling unexpected connections and aspirations. But as he looked out at the crowd, Jalen sensed an undercurrent of something more, an unease that was yet to reveal itself. That evening, Jalen returned home, exhausted yet exhilarated. He shared the success and stories from the event with his mom over dinner, her eyes glittering with pride. Yet in the quiet moments afterward, he couldn't shake the feeling that their initiative would not go unchallenged. The next few days were a blur of activity for Jalen and Maya as they sorted through the aftermath of the workshop. Emails flooded in from community members wanting to participate, offering ideas and suggestions. Jalen felt a surge of gratitude for everyone who had stepped up, filling them with a sense of purpose and vision for the future. But in the back of his mind, an anxious thought lingered. While they had garnered enthusiasm, they had also made a splash. Their grassroots movement had caught the attention of local leaders and perhaps those entrenched in maintaining the status quo. A few days post-workshop, Jalen received an unexpected phone call from a local council office. Hello, is this Jalen Dawson? A crisp voice asked. Yes, this is he, Jalen replied, curiosity piquing. Good. I'd like to discuss your recent workshop and the direction you are taking with Community First. We believe there could be legal implications of your initiative, the voice warned. Jalen felt his heart drop. Legal implications? What do you mean? The caller continued. We've received reports of community disturbances attributed to your event. A few individuals voiced some concerns regarding the content presented and the way it was framed. It's brought to our attention that this might lead to misunderstandings and potential unrest. Jalen could hardly believe his ears. Unrest. We're only trying to educate people about their rights. We're not inciting anything negative. Silence lingered on the line, and the now tense tone shifted. We suggest you meet with us so we can discuss guidelines moving forward. It's in everyone's best interest. After hanging up, Jalen felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He turned to Maya, who had just entered the room. "We might be in trouble," he said, running a hand through his hair. He recounted the conversation, and her brows knitted together with concern. "This isn't good, Jalen. We knew there might be pushback, but I didn't expect it to come from the council like this." "You have to be careful," Maya said, anxiety bubbling beneath her normally lively demeanor. "I was hoping this would inspire change, not provoke resistance," he sighed, frustration bubbling over. The next day, after conferring with Maya and seeking advice from Ms. Ramirez, Jalen decided he wouldn't shy away from the confrontation. Instead, they would attend the meeting with clarity and confidence, aiming to express their intent and commitment to positive dialogue. They arrived at the council building, a stark contrast to the life and energy of their community center where their workshop had taken place. It felt cold and imposing, a space where the air was thick with formality. They were ushered into a dimly lit conference room, where a few council members sat, stoic and serious. "Thank you for coming," one of the council members said, his tone skeptical. "We've reviewed your event, and I'll be honest, it raised concern within the community, especially regarding the language used around policing. We want to ensure that there are no misunderstandings that could lead to tension." "Let me clarify," Jalen said, finding his voice. "Our workshop aimed to educate and empower people, not to incite unrest. We believe knowledge is a bridge that can connect and unify communities." Another council member interjected, "But some feel that your approach was overly confrontational. They worry you may be inciting distrust in law enforcement, and we can't have that. Those who protect and serve need community support. Trust is earned, not mandated," Maya said defiantly, surprising Jalen with her boldness. "Our community has suffered at the hands of institutional failure. Our goals are to improve understanding and to foster dialogue, not deepen divisions. We understand your passion, but we need assurances that your initiative won't disrupt the community any further." Jalen and Maya exchanged glances, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. "If we could collaborate with you to create a more structured outreach program, we could ensure that it is positive in tone and intention. We want to build not only trust but also cooperation," Jalen offered, attempting to steer the conversation toward common ground. The council members paused, considering. After some tense deliberation, they nodded. "Let's keep the lines of communication open, and we'll reach out to you for a proposed framework. We don't want to suppress your enthusiasm, but we need to manage the narrative to maintain public sentiment." As they left the council building, Jalen felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. "Do you think they'll really come back to us?" Maya asked, biting her lip. "I hope so. We need to prove we can be a force for good, a bridge builder," Jalen answered, determination surging through him. As they walked back toward their community center, Jalen's thoughts were racing. They'd taken a step forward, engaging with the political landscape. But the looming question remained in his mind: what would be the cost of that engagement? The next few weeks proved to be a balancing act, continuing to foster their project while navigating the scrutiny of the council and others. The highs of their success were met with the lows of resistance, but each challenge only deepened Jalen's resolve. He was determined to show that community could overcome fear, hesitation, and systemic barriers together, believing in the power of unity even as shadows loomed in the wake of their burgeoning movement. One night, as Jalen went to bed, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had begun a journey towards reform, and through it all, he couldn't help but wonder how far they could take this initiative together. Change rippled out from their actions. A new chapter was unfolding, and Jalen was determined to turn adversity into resilience, even when the storm clouds gathered above.